My wife cheated with my best friend, then secretly took half of our $500, $0 house and $200, $0 in savings. Now she's suing me for joint ownership. And I just found out she's been planning this for years. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing this out, but here we are. It all started with little things I brushed off at first. My wife had always been a bit of a drama queen, constantly complaining about the smallest inconveniences, but I figured that was just her personality. We'd been married for about 10 years, and honestly, I thought we had a pretty solid life. Good job, nice house, 2 kids, a dog, the usual. But then slowly I started noticing weird stuff. It began with her phone. She'd hide it more often, locking it when she thought I wasn't looking, or she'd suddenly get defensive if I asked to see it. At first, I thought maybe she was just paranoid or maybe hiding some surprise gift or something. Then I found texts, nothing explicit at first, just vague messages with a guy named Jake. I didn't think much of it, honestly. Maybe just a work buddy or some old friend catching up. But then I noticed her changing her schedule. She'd go out more often, claiming it was for girls' night or book club, but I'd see her texting late at night, sometimes even from the bathroom when she thought I was asleep. Small things, right? I convinced myself I was overthinking it. Maybe I was just insecure after all these years. And then came the real shock. One night I came home early from work, something I rarely do, and I saw her car in the driveway but no lights on inside. I thought maybe she was out, but when I looked through the window I saw her in our bedroom with Jake. They weren't just talking, they were in bed together. I saw her face flushed, laughing the way she does when she's truly happy, except she was with him, not me. I froze. My mind spun. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I couldn't believe it. My wife, my partner, cheating on me with my best friend, Jake, of all people. I watched for a second longer, trying to process what I was seeing. It was like a punch to the gut. I felt numb, then furious. I backed out quietly, didn't want to be caught watching. I spent the next few hours on my phone, sifting through old messages, bank statements, anything I could find. That's when I discovered she had been planning this for years. The secret trips, the hidden bank accounts, the evidence of her talking about what she deserves, getting her freedom, and even taking half of everything. It was like she'd been plotting her escape and her new life with Jake behind my back. The worst part? She's always been so convincing when she lied. Said she loved me, said I was her everything. But behind my back she was orchestrating this whole thing. She even convinced me to put our house, worth $500,000, in her name, claiming she wanted to protect me if anything happened. Turns out she was planning to take it all. And she did. I found out she'd secretly transferred half of our house's equity to herself and drained a good chunk of our savings. Another $200, $0 that I had no clue about. She'd been planning this for years, and I was just too blind to see it. Honestly, I felt like I'd been hit by a train. Betrayed, humiliated, furious. I couldn't believe she'd been lying to my face all this time and that she'd been sleeping with my best friend Jake while pretending to be the perfect wife. It's like my whole life was a lie. I thought I knew her. I thought I knew us. Now I'm left with a mountain of deception, a house half empty, and a betrayal that cuts deeper than I can describe. I don't even know how to start picking up the pieces, but I do know one thing: this isn't over. Not by a long shot. The moment I uncovered everything, I felt like I was drowning. It was like all the air had been sucked out of my lungs and I was just flailing in a sea of shock and anger. I kept replaying that night in my head, the way his face lit up when she was with Jake, the way she lied about everything, the way she convinced me she loved me when she was planning her entire escape behind my back. I couldn't believe I had been so blind. I remember sitting on the couch, staring at the bank statements and the transfer records. My hands were trembling. I couldn't even bring myself to cry. I was too furious. How could she do this? How could she take half of everything we built just like that? The house, our savings, everything I thought was ours, she just snatched it away. And for what? A guy she met on the side. A fling that she probably knew would end in disaster. I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I called her that night, voice shaking but trying to sound calm. When she answered, her tone was bitchy, dismissive, like she didn't even care about what I'd found out. "What do you want, Jason? "I'm busy," she snapped. I didn't hold back. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the money, the plans she'd been making for years. Her reaction, denial, of course. "You're overreacting," she said with that fake sweetness that always made my skin crawl. "Jake and I are just friends. You're reading too much into it. You're just jealous." "Jealous? After everything?" I just laughed bitterly. "Jealous? No, I'm furious. You've been cheating on me, lying to me, stealing from me, while I was working my ass off to keep this family afloat. And now you're claiming I'm jealous. That's rich." She tried to spin it, saying I was paranoid, that I didn't understand her, that she deserved to be happy. I told her I wanted her out of the house. She scoffed. "You can't just kick me out. This is our home, Jason. You're not the only one who has rights here." That's when I realized she was planning to fight me over everything. She was already preparing for a legal battle. I never thought I'd be in a situation like this, but I had to do something. I started digging into our legal documents, our finances, trying to figure out how deep her plans went. The next day, I hired a lawyer. I wanted to know what I was up against. It turned out she had already filed paperwork to claim joint ownership of the house, claiming that because we were married, everything was community property, even though I'd never agreed to put her on the deed. She lied through her teeth, saying she had rights to the house, that I was trying to cheat her out of her fair share, but I knew better. She'd also been secretly withdrawing money from our joint account, funneling it into her own accounts. I found evidence of her transferring thousands of dollars to offshore accounts, all under the guise of investments she said she was making. She'd been planning this for years, and I was just discovering it all now. The more I learned, the angrier I became. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we built? I had always been the stable one, the one who paid the bills, kept the house running, took care of the kids. And she was just plotting her escape, her new life with Jake, while pretending to be the loyal wife. I also found out she had been sleeping with Jake in secret, even after I started catching on. The texts, the late-night calls, the trips she took for work, that I later realized were code for meetings with him. It all fit together. She planned her escape for years, and I was just the fool who didn't see it coming. I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. My trust was shattered. My wife, the woman I loved, had been lying to my face. My best friend, the guy I thought was my brother, was actually her lover. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. How could I have been so blind? How could the woman I swore to love and protect do this to me? Now I'm left with a decision. Do I fight her in court? Do I try to salvage what's left? Or do I just cut my losses and start over? Honestly, I don't know. But one thing's clear. I'm not going to let her walk away with everything while I get nothing. She's not taking my house, my savings, or my dignity without a fight. And I swear she's going to regret ever crossing me. After everything I uncovered, I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying all the signs I missed, all the lies I believed. The betrayal cut so deep I felt like I was hemorrhaging inside. My wife, the woman I loved, was a stranger. Worse, she was a thief and a cheater. And Jake, my supposed best friend, was the worst of all. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it coming, how I could have been so blind for so long. I decided I had to act fast. The legal stuff was complicated, but I knew enough to realize she was trying to claim joint ownership of the house and the savings. I sat down with my lawyer, Mark, who was sharp, no nonsense, and had seen plenty of cases like this. We went through everything, proof of her secret transfers, the texts, the lies she'd spun over the years. Mark told me I had a solid case to contest her claims, but it wouldn't be easy. She was good at manipulating words and twisting facts in court. I knew I couldn't just sit around waiting for her to take everything. I needed a plan, something that would hit her where it hurt. That's when I remembered the offshore accounts she'd been funneling money into. I started digging deeper into those. Turns out she'd hidden hundreds of thousands in accounts overseas, money she planned to use to start her new life with Jake. I had no idea how she managed to do all this without me noticing. She'd been meticulous, lying about her expenses, hiding her phone, and even setting up fake accounts under fake names. I also discovered the real extent of her planning. She'd been talking about starting fresh, getting out, and leaving me with nothing for years. She kept a journal, probably to reassure herself that it was all justified. Reading her words, I saw how calculated she'd been, how she'd convinced herself she deserved more than what we had. She'd even been saving up for a big move, planning to take her cut of the house, the savings, and then some. The hardest part was realizing how much she'd lied. She told me she loved me, that she wanted to grow old with me, but all along she was plotting her escape. I felt stupid, betrayed, and furious. I had given her everything, my love, my trust, my hard-earned money, and she'd used it all to feed her lies and her greed. I decided I had to confront her again, but this time with everything on the table. I arranged to meet her at a neutral place, a coffee shop near her office. I wanted her to see I was serious. When she arrived, I laid out all the evidence I'd found. Her face flickered with panic at first, then quickly turned into that annoyed, bitchy expression she always had when she was trying to manipulate someone. "You're crazy, Jason," she spat. "You're just jealous because I found someone better. Jake is a good man and I deserve happiness." I looked her straight in the eyes. "Happiness? You're stealing from me, lying to my face, sleeping with my best friend, and trying to take everything I worked for. That's not happiness, that's betrayal. And I'm not going to let you get away with it." She scoffed. "You're overreacting. I never took half the house. I only want what's fair. You're just mad because I found someone who actually makes me happy." That was the moment I realized she was completely detached from reality. She was spinning her lies again, trying to justify her actions. I told her I was done playing her game. I'd fight her in court, I'd expose everything, and I'd make sure she paid for what she'd done. Then she started crying, fake tears, of course. "You're so mean, Jason. I only ever wanted us to be happy. I love you, but I can't stay in this marriage when you're so controlling and jealous." I felt a mix of rage and sadness. Rage because she destroyed everything, and sadness because I'd loved her once. I told her she was a selfish bitch, that I'd see her in court, and that she'd regret ever crossing me. I left that meeting with a plan to freeze her accounts, get a court order to stop her from selling or transferring any more assets, and to start the process of claiming my rightful share of the house and savings. In the days that followed, I worked tirelessly. I contacted a forensic accountant to trace her hidden money. I gathered all the proof I could: texts, emails, bank statements. I even hired a private investigator to follow her, just in case she was planning to move or hide more assets. It was exhausting, but I knew I had to be thorough. I had to make sure she couldn't get away with any more lies or tricks. Meanwhile, kept up her act, acting like everything was fine, even trying to guilt-trip me into backing down. She call, cry, apologize, pretending to be the victim. But I saw through her. I knew what she was doing. She thought she could manipulate her way out of this, but I was done being played. I kept telling myself I'd get through this. I'd fight for what's mine and make her pay for her betrayal. I didn't know exactly how, but I was determined. I'd been humiliated and broken inside, but I refused to let her win. Not without a fight. The legal process moved faster than I expected, and honestly, I was surprised at how much evidence I could gather in such a short time. My lawyer, Mark, was a beast, sharp, relentless, and experienced with cases like this. We filed a motion to freeze her assets, halt any further transfers, and prevent her from selling or refinancing the house. The first court hearing was a nightmare. Showed up looking smug, like she already thought she had won. She was dressed to impress, acting like she was the victim, crying fake tears and throwing around words like unfair and abuse of marital rights. But I had all the proof. I handed over the bank statements, the offshore account details, the texts, everything. I could see her falter for a second when the judge looked over the documents. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was entitled to her fair share because of some vague contributions, but Mark shot that down quickly. We argued that she'd been hiding assets, committing fraud, and planning her escape for years. The judge took all that into account and granted the freeze on her accounts and assets until the case was decided. That was a huge relief. It meant she couldn't just run away with the money or sell the house before the court made a ruling. Still, I knew she'd fight dirty. She'd try to manipulate the system, maybe even lie under oath. I had to be prepared for that. In the meantime, I started working on a detailed valuation of the house. Turns out, Our home was worth around $500, $0, but she was claiming it was jointly owned, and she had some legal right to half of it. I argued that I was the only one on the deed. She was only claiming ownership because of her marriage rights, which I planned to contest. I also discovered she'd been draining the savings account, more than I initially thought. She transferred hundreds of thousands into her offshore accounts, and I was getting closer to uncovering exactly how much she'd hidden. It was of emotions. Some days I felt numb, like I was just going through the motions. Other days I'd get so angry I couldn't sleep. I'd stare at the ceiling, thinking about her lying to me all those years, sleeping with Jake, planning her escape while I was out working hard to keep everything afloat. It was like I'd been living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. One night, I found a series of texts from her to Jake from a few weeks earlier. They were talking about the big move, getting away from Jason and starting fresh somewhere nobody knows us. My stomach sank. She'd been planning this for so long and I had no idea. She convinced herself she deserved a better life, one where she could cheat, steal, and lie without consequences. It made me sick to my stomach, but it also fueled my resolve. I knew I couldn't just sit back and wait for her to dig her heels in. I had to act decisively. I hired a forensic accountant to trace her hidden accounts and a private investigator to keep tabs on her. I wanted to know every move she made, every penny she transferred, every secret meeting she had with Jake. I couldn't let her get away with this, not after everything. The worst part, I started questioning myself. Did I miss signs? Was I blind or just naive? For years I thought I knew her. I thought she was the love of my life. Turns out she was just using me. And Jake, he was supposed to be my best friend. I couldn't believe I ever trusted either of them. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep the rabbit hole went. She'd been manipulating everyone around her, my family, her friends, even her own children. She'd spun stories about how unfair her life was, how I was controlling and jealous, how she deserved more. But behind all that, she was just a thief and a liar. Now I'm at a crossroads. The court date is coming up, and I know she'll do everything she can to win, to keep what she stole. But I'm ready. I've got everything laid out: proof, legal strategy, and a burning desire to see her pay for what she's done. This isn't just about the money anymore, it's about justice. It's about making her realize that you can't betray someone like this and expect to get away with it. I don't care what she says or how many tears she sheds. She's a liar, a thief, and a cheater, and I'm going to make sure she's held accountable for every bit of it. The court date finally arrived, and I was a nervous wreck. Not because I doubted the strength of my case, but because I knew would pull out all the stops. She's good at playing the victim, at twisting the truth, at making people doubt what's right in front of their faces. I sat there in the courtroom, feeling like I was on trial myself, knowing that she'd do everything possible to spin this in her favor. When took the stand, she gave her usual performance, crying, acting hurt, claiming she was only trying to save our marriage and that I was controlling and jealous. She insisted that she never transferred any money offshore, that she only wanted what's fair, and that I was just trying to manipulate her. Her lawyer was feeding her lines, and I could see her doing her best to look innocent, like she was the victim, but I had all the evidence. I laid out the bank statements, the offshore account transfers, the texts, the journal entries. I explained how she had been planning her escape for years, how she'd been secretly siphoning off our savings, and how she'd been lying to everyone, including her own family. I watched her try to spin her story, but the court saw through it. When it was my turn, I told the truth: how she'd betrayed me, how she'd stolen from me, how she'd been sleeping with Jake all along. I described the moment I caught her, how I felt like my world was collapsing. I told the court how she'd been planning this for years, how she'd kept me in the dark, and how she had no right to claim half the house or our savings. The judge listened carefully, asking questions, examining the evidence. It was clear she was taking everything seriously. When we wrapped up, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I'd get some justice. In the days that followed, I kept working with my lawyer to prepare for the next steps. Lawyer filed some counterarguments, claiming that she had contributed equally to the marriage and deserved her fair share. She also tried to argue that the offshore accounts weren't relevant, claiming it was just personal savings. But we had everything documented. She'd lied, she'd hidden, and she'd planned this entire scheme. Meanwhile, I was dealing with the emotional fallout. I couldn't stop thinking about how she'd lied to my face for years. How she'd convinced herself she was entitled to everything I worked for. The betrayal had left me hollow, but I knew I had to stay strong for the kids, for myself. I couldn't let her win, not after everything. One night I sat at my desk going over all the evidence again. I realized how much I'd been blinded for so long. I thought I knew her, but she was just a master manipulator. And Jake, my supposed best friend, was just as guilty. The thought of them together made me feel sick, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I finally saw what was real and what was just lies. I made a decision. I was done fighting for her approval, for her lies, for a marriage that was already over. I would fight for what was rightfully mine. I'd take back my house, my savings, my dignity, and I'd make her pay for the years of deception and betrayal. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined. This was about justice, about reclaiming my life. And honestly, I was already feeling a little lighter, knowing I was no longer under her spell. I'd been a fool, but I was waking up. She thought she could walk all over me, but she'd underestimated how far I'd go to set things straight. This was just the beginning, and I wasn't backing down. I'd come out of this stronger, one way or another. The final court hearing was a whirlwind. I went in knowing I had everything on my side: proof of her lies, the hidden accounts, the illegal transfers, the years of planning. Was there, dressed in her usual manipulative manner, trying to look innocent, but I could see right through her. Her face was pale, her eyes darting around, desperate to find a way out. She knew she'd lost control. When the judge finally spoke, it was like a weight lifted. She ruled strongly in my favor, awarding me full ownership of the house, declaring that had no claim to half of it, and ordering her to return the stolen savings and offshore funds. The judge also issued a permanent injunction preventing her from selling or transferring any remaining assets until the final division. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Relief that justice was served, but sadness for the years lost, the betrayal, and the trust shattered. His face twisted in anger and frustration. She tried to argue, to twist the judge's words, but it was useless. Her lies had been exposed, her schemes dismantled. She stormed out of the courtroom, screaming about how unfair everything was, but I didn't care. I had already made my peace with it all. In the aftermath, I started reclaiming my life. The house was mine again, and I moved into a smaller place, just me and the kids. I cut ties with completely, no more calls, no more texts. I wanted nothing to do with her or Jake. I felt a strange sense of freedom, like I'd been released from a prison I didn't even realize I was in. The kids are adjusting, though it's not easy. They're confused and hurt, but I'm doing my best to shield them from the worst of it. I've told them the truth in a way that's age-appropriate, about honesty, trust, and how people can surprise you, sometimes in the worst ways. I want them to grow up knowing what real integrity looks like. Looking back, I realize I've learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and it can be shattered in an instant if you're not careful. I also learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who can hurt you the most. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I fought for what was rightfully mine, and I won. Now I'm focusing on rebuilding myself. I've started therapy, working through the anger and betrayal and figuring out how to trust again, if that's even possible. I've also become more cautious, more aware of the signs I once ignored. I won't be naive again. And to anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the small signs. Be honest with yourself and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. People can surprise you, but you don't have to let their betrayal define you. You're stronger than the pain, and eventually you'll find a way to heal. This experience has changed me forever. I'll never see trust the same way, but I'll also never let anyone take me for a fool again. Life goes on, and I'm determined to rebuild what I lost, better, wiser, and more aware than ever.